huge quarterback news all of a sudden the last few days for the Baylor Bears. Of course, we talked about DeQuan Finn, the Toledo legend, before. We talked about him yesterday. He was on campus yesterday, actually. Thursday is the report that we heard, was that he was in here visiting the facilities yesterday. And I talked about how big a recruiting win that would be for Baylor. Look, he's not going to have his number retired or anything like that, but in a year where so much goes wrong and it looks like the state of the program is just absolutely going down the crapper, and to be able to bring in one of the best quarterbacks in the portal would be a huge win for Baylor. And I think would be, again, like I said yesterday, one of the only guys in the portal at any position who can come in and add some wins to your schedule. No one can do that like a quarterback can, and he is one of the most accomplished quarterbacks and one of the most skilled quarterbacks that's in the transfer portal. And then we heard also yesterday, like literally as DeQuan Finn's on campus, a report from Pete Thamel, who is one of the leading writers in college football, one that you should definitely trust, has this report. He goes on College Football Live, and he's talking about Malik Murphy, who officially entered the transfer portal, I believe it was Wednesday, the Texas backup quarterback who did see some time when Quinn Ewers was hurt this year, got a couple of starts under his belt. And he's talking about the teams that Malik Murphy would be interested in, or teams that would be interested in him, I should say. He says, quote, preliminary list, it's very early still. A couple of schools that have indicated interest are both USCs, that's Southern Cal and South Carolina, Georgia, Oregon State, Syracuse, Duke, and Baylor. What? Seriously? Baylor? Malik Murphy? I'm sure most of you guys were saying, sign me up. And look, if that's what Baylor can do, I'm like, okay, I'll take that. Now, I don't know how many recruiting battles, with all things being equal, they're winning with those schools, but this is the transfer portal. Not all things are equal. Not all teams are going to put him as their number one priority. Not all these teams, I should say, are going to have the same NIL that they can give out. You think Baylor's bad? Syracuse doesn't even use it. You think Duke's is much better? I don't know. These are basically what doubles. Pete Thamel goes on to say this. Those are basically what doubles as a list of quarterback needy schools, and there's plenty of interest for Malik Murphy. That part of the quote, I think, well, are these teams actually showing interest in Malik Murphy, or are these just teams that Pete Thamel thinks needs quarterbacks? They do, by the way. But does he know DeQuan Finn is in visiting at Baylor the very day that he says this, probably the very moment he says this? I don't know. So that makes me think, is this a team or a list of teams that Pete Thamel has known that has real interest in Malik Murphy, or are they just teams that need a quarterback? So take it with a grain of salt, I think, when it comes to that report. I don't know. I don't have many sources inside the building. I've checked it and kicked the tires on a few. No one's really heard much about Malik Murphy, so there's nothing I can stand on and say about that. Now, what I will say about Malik Murphy is he's a heck of a player, at least in terms of his potential. We haven't seen him on the field all that much, but he was the number 9 quarterback recruit in 2022, which made him comfortably the lowest ranked of the 3 quarterbacks that played for Texas this year. Number 1 in Quinn Ewers in 2021, and then number 1 in Arch Manning in 2023. So he was comfortably behind, but the number 9 quarterback in his class, by the way, love where he went to high school, Junipero Serra High School. You might know it as the alma mater of Barry Bonds, maybe the greatest baseball player ever. Oh, but Cam, we're talking about football here. Okay, it's also Tom Brady's alma mater. So probably the best baseball player ever and unequivocally the best football player ever also produced Malik Murphy. So he gets some action in 6 games this year. Couple of Longhorn blowouts, as you can imagine, but did start 2 in the middle of the year, and actually a couple of big home games for the Longhorns when Quinn Ewers was hurt. And in his 6 games, he goes 40 for 71, which is only about a 56% completion percentage. Not terrific, not jumping off the page. Throws for 477, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks. They go 2-0 in his starts. Remember the thriller against Kansas State in overtime, and then beat BYU pretty handily. I think that was 35-6. So I mean, the numbers aren't terrific, but this is his first time really playing, and it's just not easy for a kid when Quinn Ewers is the guy and has been for 2 years now to come in the middle of a Big 12 championship season, a playoff season, and keep the status quo and to score a big win, by the way, against Kansas State, who was hot on their heels for a Big 12 championship game appearance. Malik Murphy comes in and he gets the job done. Now, looking at some of his splits, it just shows me he's a young guy. But the long way of saying that, his best completion percentage and yards per attempt were in the first quarter, and the worst of those two stats were in the fourth quarter. So what that says to me is, look, he plays for an excellent offensive coach in Steve Sarkisian, right? Was one of the very best in the nation. So he gets a good game plan. And on the scripted drives, he did really well and showed a lot of confidence in that. And maybe that confidence or that execution kind of waned as the game went on. But for a kid who's 19 years old and he's getting his first starts this year, that still speaks volumes to me. I mean, that's still pretty good. And what people really love about him is that potential that they see in him. The spring game, he stole the show for UT. And Arch Manning's first time in a Texas uniform, it was Malik Murphy that stole the show. He had these back-to-back just 40-yard bombs, like on a sixpence, 40 yards down the field. One of them's dropped. One of them goes for an 80-yard touchdown. So he was the one that stole the show in Arch Manning's Texas debut, if you will, in the spring game. And again, that number 9 quarterback in the class, he's 6'5", 238, and got a cannon for an arm. You know, we're still waiting to see that completion percentage go up and that accuracy go up. But that's a 19-year-old kid playing major college football for the first time. The intangibles are really good. I mean, if nothing else, he will be a combine star at the worst. I mean, it's not unreasonable to compare him to someone size-wise as Jalen Hurts. That's a lot like what Jalen Hurts looked like when he started at Alabama. And I think Malik Murphy can throw the ball a little bit better than Jalen Hurts can. Don't know if that means he's going to take a team to a Super Bowl in a couple of years, but that's a pretty darn good comparison. That's a national championship quarterback and a guy who was the Heisman Trophy winner through about 6 or 8 weeks in Joe Burrow's season when he was incredible. Jalen Hurts was right at the top of that. So that's kind of the intangibles of him. I watched him in those 2 games because I watched a lot of UT this year. Something I did notice about him was, even though the accuracy wasn't tip top, he really wasn't too jittery. Like, he has a smooth game. And if Baylor can come in and get a guy like that, I'll take that 10 times out of 10. Now, here's what Malik had to say about it when asked what he's looking for in a transfer destination. Quote, "A place where I can play," end quote, or continue to get better and continue to be around great people and great players and just to do what's best for me in my career. But a place where I can play is what he's looking for. Baylor is that. Absolutely, Baylor is that. I've said it a few times now. I think if you bring in someone the quality of a Malik Murphy or a DeQuan Finn, that's an open competition. As much as I do like the potential of Sawyer Robertson, I do. This is a place where he can come in and play right now. Now, he is from Inglewood before going to Junipero Serra, which is up in the Redlands, San Mateo, up there by San Francisco. But he's originally from Inglewood, which is in LA. So USC comes calling. That's a tough one for him to put down. Oregon State just lost their top 2 quarterbacks, so they're pretty desperate. He could be playing a Pac-12 schedule. I don't know what Oregon State's going to be playing next year. And obviously, Georgia's a really, really tough one to turn down. Up there is one of the big powers of the SEC, and he can actually take on UT while he's there. So Baylor, I don't know. I don't know if they're showing real interest or if Pete Thamel just says, well, Baylor needs a quarterback. But Let me know what you think. I'd take Malik Murphy. I'd probably take Taquan Finn first because of his experience and what I've seen him do on tape and what he has accomplished versus the potential of a Malik Murphy. But there's a reason why he's so hyped up and why he's going to be one of the, right now, one of the biggest names in the transfer portal.